Everything's fine, Miss So. I'm here. I'm just a little late. Hope everybody's having a good week. Um, it's the weather's starting to get warmer. We got daylight savings coming uh, to an end. Yes. Hope you had a good week. How did you do anything interesting this week? I know it was a busy week for me, but now that it's over, can kind of relax, take a little break. Yeah, same here. I tried to end work early today, but it was one of those situations where kind of had to stick around until um, other people were finished. But it was a good week, productive. Some good things happened, and tomorrow my son gets to participate in his little, uh, you know, every year at the end of the year, the kids practice, like a um I guess you just call it like a recital or concert. They sing a variety of songs. They got This preschool has like several age groups, and each of those age group classes prepare something, and it's really just for the parents to kind of like see the development and the creativity of them as a group. It's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. um I know my son's part of this like skit where he's gonna sing and dance and pretend like he's like a samurai and all that. So it should be good. And that is tomorrow afternoon. So looking forward to that. Should be a nice, relaxing weekend. Of course, Jeff and I will go live tomorrow night as well. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. And we got a fun little Friday little episode here for you. Um, we're going to cover, uh, I think, in terms of comics, this is quite an important year uh, for, uh, I think, from like 85 to 8, the late 80s, 85 through 90, I would want to say two. It's a very um, critical time for the comic book industry. Um, what you begin to see, uh, the economy is doing quite well, and you see just a lot of especially families with a lot of income, and that income is going toward things like toys, and technology is emerging. um, it's quite an interesting period. A lot of dynamic things happening, a lot of fluid things happening in the late 80s. But particularly in terms of entertainment, you see sharp growth in music, movies, comic books, sports, just all around. I think you see a start uh, commoditization happen um, in the economy. So, they're just marketing things better. They're creating real strong markets, and people are, they've got disposable income, and they're, um, you know, uh, pouring that money into different things they enjoy. And comic books is definitely a part of that. You see a real rise and growth in the hobby. And, comic books are kind of marketed as a collectible that will um, ultimately, uh, it's sort of an investment in terms of uh, people are looking at like golden age, silver age books, and the rise in value of those books with the rise in demand for the older books. So they think, oh wow, Action Comics is several thousands of dollars. Maybe if I buy this Spider-Man one now, this Spider-Man one down the road will be, hundreds of dollars. Who knows? But of course, you know, uh, the production, because there's so many people pouring into the hobby, the companies want to capitalize, and they really, you see the production runs on some of these books, especially over at Marvel, um, and some of the initial runs uh, at Image Comics, just across the board. You know, you see these high production runs where they're printing, uh, you know, tens of thousands of copies, if not more. I think we look at Jim Lee X Men comics. There were, there were millions of that printed. Probably hundreds of thousands of other comics printed. So we're talking about quite a stark growth in terms of um, how many people were buying comic books, as well as the production volume of the industry. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. You know, I think overall, you see music change. Music's no longer enjoyed on records. We've moved into cassette tapes, and then transitioned very quickly into uh, compact discs. And then you see music really transform with the advent of video. So music videos become uh, just they evolve to become these low budget sort of accompaniments to a track, to the actual um, things people enjoy about the music. Becomes very integrated into how we you know consume music. And movies, they adopt bigger budgets, bigger stars, bigger names. um, the movies themselves become different. uh, they just become like little formulas for success. So if a movie has a success, they build a formula around it, and you see a lot of copycat type genres form. Um, you know, you have really innovative films like Terminator, right, or Aliens, and then you see a bunch of like copycat movies form around that kind of formulaic success. Superman is one of those exceptions. He's kind of a standalone comic book movie for a while, and then Batman comes along, and Batman does create that sort of box office template for comic book movies. And this all, Batman was released in the late 80s, 89, if I'm not mistaken. And so, that was a big part. So today we're going to focus on February 1987. And so let's start with the song, kind of get us in the mood here. I have my comic book jukebox all set. So I'm just going to replay it for you guys, and we'll go from there. February 1987. There we go. So if you didn't recognize that song, it is a sort of a different version of the song. Like, they don't have um, "Open Your Heart" as an actual single track. I got it off like I think a DVD version, so it's a kind of a live version. That was Madonna singing "Open Your Heart" from the album True Blue, which was a phenomenal um, follow-up to her, like a Virgin, smash album, and, just I mean, that album was, probably one of the most, top selling, and, so many I think what had 7, top 10 singles off that, True Blue album, and it just catapulted Madonna into, like, uh, to become sort of the queen of pop at a very early stage in her career. It's one of those, remarkable things for a music artist, and again, this kind of revolves around that idea that, um, the marketing of, whether it's books, whether it's music, whether it's film, just the the market for that content was just so strong, and really you could use some of these like mass media channels to promote whatever you wanted to sell, and the things people wanted to buy, especially around entertainment, was very it was evolving. It was becoming sort of a tsunami event in the late 80s, and it would carry on through today. It's just evolved in different ways, but the film industry, we're talking, it's a multi-billion dollar, almost $1 trillion industry. Music, same. Comic books, when you attach it to comic book movies, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry as well. So the stakes just continued to grow in this late 80s period, and yeah, being a little from going from a young kid to adolescence during this period, definitely was, you know I think targeted at me in a lot of ways, and a lot of kids of our generation. And I'm glad you brought up Prince, Miss So, because here was a movie and an album, Purple Rain, that we'd never seen before. We'd never had an artist feature film. It almost felt like a feature film music video because that soundtrack was such a big part of that movie, and the hits that came out of that soundtrack, all the you know top hits for Prince and the great featured artist on that album. It was just a incredible thing to see. And I remember, watching Purple Rain right around this period after it had been released in the movie theaters. My friends' parents let us watch it, and so I got to see, Apollonia, like, topless and getting all, um, you know, getting aroused by that whole scene, and it was just such a good movie. And yeah, you just come out of that movie just appreciating um, that very uh, you know innovative sound. You had this very soul funk combination with rock, but it was all tied together with a very pop synth sound. It was just one of those rare, again, mid to late 80s type sounds that evolved from this period. And again, that I mean, a lot of people, Prince has a great career and such a catalog of great music, but I think people will always remember him because Purple Rain was such a cultural event. It was just such a big event, and it really solidified him as one of the most gifted artists of that era. So we're blessed with a lot of great music, and I'm just glad we could share it with you guys here a little bit. Yeah, Madonna, so big. Dark Horse, yeah, Dark Horse emerged in this late 80s period as well. Image appeared, a lot of, kind of independent um, comic book companies were kind of putting out a lot of different kind of content. The content was changing in the late 80s as well. And that's where we're going to focus now. as we introduce the book. So last week we talked about the Man of Steel, which uh, reset the DC universe. It was a new volume of Superman that emerged, and DC was kind of resetting the timeline so that it would be consistent and kind of everybody would exist in one cohesive timeline and universe. So the three characters or three main comic titles they had to reset was one, Superman, and the other two I'm going to cover today. And the song I chose to pair that Madonna song, or the comic book I chose to pair the Madonna song with, is Wonder Woman Volume 2, Number 1. But also coming out at the same time in February 1987 was really a most incredible follow up by Frank Miller uh, for to Dark Knight Returns, and that was Batman Year One. This is almost like a year later, but he teams up with David Mazzucchelli, and they introduced this four-part series of Batman Year One, and very this is very different in terms of artistic tone than The Dark Knight Returns. Um, it has a very sort of detective, because it's told through Jim Gordon, and it's it's really one of the most unique takes on the Batman origin story. It's a modern origin telling, but it's so like grippingly like 80s, like um yeah, it has sort of like a 40s, 50s noir style to it as well. um I don't know if that was intentional, but it was definitely, you just couldn't place this in a specific time period. It could have been from the past, the past 30 years ago, to the modern day, which we were talking about the late 80s. But definitely, man, well, it was just one of the most powerful stories, action packed, full of tension, very character driven, and very different in tone from The Dark Knight Returns. This is, again, kind of focusing on the story of Bruce Wayne and how Batman comes to be, and the demons inside of Batman that are very kind of, like, he's dealing with a lot of trauma, he's kind of processing it, and you know, it's more, I think, you get more singular voices in this one, whereas The Dark Knight Returns is just kind of like a lot of different things going on. You got multimedia, like kind of people like news reports and events, kind of painting the picture in the story. Here it's just really narrative driven with the voices of like Bruce Wayne and the voices of Jim Gordon and Selena Kyle, kind of like, you know, driving this early story. So really powerful. It's a 4-issue series, and it's really a graphic novel. So I want to talk about graphic novel, and then we'll get into Wonder Woman a little bit. But the concept of the graphic novel really emerges in this period with, again, the success of books like The Dark Knight Returns, uh, Frank Miller's follow-up, Batman Year One, and what will release soon after this book, The Watchmen by Alan Moore. And there's, of course, a bunch of different other books during this period, but it's really uh, the the term graphic novel means graphic, something that's not typically your funny books, but something a little bit more adult driven. And it's a novella. You have it's not a serial. It's chapters or a series of books, but it wraps up neatly, and it's later released in a graphic novel book form. So all these things become trade paperback type uh, book form pieces of content that we enjoy. And you see an explosion of this content during this time, but it was really driven by these sort of early commercialized graphic novels. But you know, the term graphic novel was coined in the 60s, and obviously you have this kind of novella comic format throughout the golden age. Um, Will Eisner did something similar in the late 70s, but this is the first marketed one of the first. So there's a couple of books that kind of marketed themselves as a graphic novel from the that term uh, that was coined in the 60s. And one of them is Richard Corbin's Bloodstar. This is actually something he marketed as graphic novel specifically, and it's in a book form. This is black and white comics. Kind of, you have some, narrative mixed in with the panels as well. Um, but yeah, this was late 70s, um, but it was very adult in terms of nature. And then you see, things like heavy metal, the movie, the animation come out, also very adult in nature. And you sort of see this shift of animation being not targeted at kids anymore, but comics and animation being targeted at adults. So yeah, that's what's really fun about this late 80s period. We get to see, it was really kind of the popularity of this format was really driven by content such as this. And not to say, it wasn't in comics, because even in the 60s, like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, they would do like short like runs that were independent, and in kind of like a novella collected story form, like several serial, like you could almost say it's like a start and finish in this little run that that if you compiled it would be a graphic novel. So it's not really a novel idea, but it does emerge as a commodity. And in the 90s is, I mean, if you look at today, everything pretty much in serial form is designed, or it's initially um, designed or directed as a graphic novel form, right? They're going to produce a trade paperback, whether it's a large volume or if it's a short force series type. Sometimes they're even one volumes, right? You have these one shots that are just really small, book formats. So really innovative transition, changes the comic book industry completely, and then it gets more people reading and into these stories and books. We're talking, like Frank Miller really drove the popularity of Batman. Go check out Raph's, uh, Batman, late 80s Batman video, Raph, from Raph's uh, Vintage Books, I think it's called. Keep forgetting, no, Raph's Retro Comics. Keep forgetting the name of his channel. Raph's Retro Comics. He does a great thing on this period with regards to Batman. But now we're going to focus on this gem of a masterpiece, which was released together with the Batman. Batman was released in February 1987, so was Wonder Woman, Volume 2, Number 1. Again, these are modern day resets and retellings of sort of how these characters evolved. And Wonder Woman is very different from the Batman we just introduced. This is what you would typically see in I guess, a good comic book um, serial. And it was just sort of a issue to issue, and within the serial run, you had maybe two-part series, maybe a three-parter, but you just follow the character through a series of events. And I think George Perez would write the stories all the way through maybe probably issue 60. So 60 issues of illustrating and writing. Now, other people would come on to illustrate and write, and take over the run, but Perez was just such a key part of this run, early run. I don't even want to say early, because again, gets into the 60s in terms of its serial count. So he was very much involved in the creative process of this book. And man, is it just brilliant. The artwork is brilliant. The story, he gives the origin of Themyscira. It's a land of Amazons who the Greek gods kind of mold from the souls of women who were, uh, you know, unjustly murdered, um, kind of recognizing the impact of, you know, kind of domestic violence throughout the history of man, right? So women who were just unfairly uh, killed, unjustly killed. And he was kind of just like taking that sort of misogyny and abuse of women over the history of humanity and really forging it to really create um, a community of strong women, that didn't need men. And then these quote unquote, kind of goddesses, Greek goddesses, they kind of, um, Zeus creates this sort of, or the Greek gods create this sort of paradise for these race of Amazons, and then they create a very special um, sort of prophet, childlike uh, uh, baby, and then that is Diana. Diana is sort of like, she's sort of this special, um, unique child of that was created by the gods. And anyway, she enters this contest, um, unbeknownst to her mother, and she wins the contest. And she's gifted she's becomes sort of the champion of the Amazons. She's gifted these like bracelets and the lasso, and eventually she takes an interest in uh, humanity, Earth and human beings, and kind of gets um, sent to watch over and protect over, or she takes just a vested interest in Earth, you know, and yeah, it just unfolds where she's trying to serve the will of the gods, but also protecting humanity from the evil forces, the evil gods. And that's where we get Ares eventually. He becomes one of the gods that are seeking power and control on Earth. So, again, a very long series uh, where George Perez gets to really build this universe, build this tale, introduces all the sort of significant characters. Um, it's very The characters are very you know female driven. It's a very uh, feminist driven story where the women are the protagonists. The men are sort of the more uh, I guess incompetent and uh, morally vague characters in this, especially some of the Greek gods. They just kind of lack this sort of sense. Um, it's a sort of a more like old fashioned view of the way the modern world, and that really comes like there's just this sort of like disconnect between the gods and the modern world, um, and how we view things in terms of human relationships. So yes, George Perez gifted us one of the most beautiful covers for sure. Which is, and this is a wraparound. It's a beautiful wraparound cover. Can see, and really, there's no other artist that can add so much detail to a cover. I mean, I talk about Jim Lee and Neil Adams and all these great artists, but in terms of a cover like this with the background, and you see all these like individual characters in this one massive sort of you know sort of massive collage of characters. You just don't see it. Um, just there aren't many artists that there aren't any artists that can produce this kind of detail and tell a story through an image. And look at the, I mean, just look at the beautiful trade dress here as well. That this is a new trade dress for the character. Batman gets one as well around this period. You know, this is something new as well. Superman stays the same, but Wonder Woman and Batman definitely get kind of a new look, modern look, and that's fine by me. Now, the success of Batman would spawn uh, Batman Year Two. This one has is written by uh, it's written by uh, what's his name? I don't remember the guy's name. I think Alan. No, anyway, it's Alan Davis, and this is also penciled by Todd McFarlane, starting in issue 2. Um, and Todd McFarlane works with again Alfredo Alcala as his anchor on this one, so it's just a lot of. I'm trying to remember the author's name. Barr. Let's see, is it Brian Barr? Brett Barr? Anyway, it's Barr writes this one. McFarlane and Alcala do the art on this one. And then eventually we get Batman Year 3. This is Marv Wolfman and George Perez. So that team up, they gift us with this Year 3 rendition, which features, you know, features, this is the first appearance of which Batman, which Robin is it? I can't think. My mind's drawing blanks right now. Hold on just a moment. It's Batman 436. Tim Drake. His first appearance of Tim Drake. And we get him as a new Robin, the origin of Tim Drake Robin in this one. If I like Wonder Woman, check out Amethyst, Princess of Gem World from the 80s. Okay. All right, I'll check that out. Your mom took you to see Prince, Purple Rain? Yeah, Purple Rain, again, I was too young to see it in the theater, but I was fortunate enough to see it on VHS at my friend's place. And yeah, it was, again, one of those movies, you're kind of developing, you're developing, and definitely movies like Apollonia in that movie definitely helped with the development. I'll just leave it at that. Um, so we didn't cover the movies. So February 1987. It's really weird because I would not see this movie until I think 1989, but it came out in 1987 February. And that movie is Platoon, starring William Defoe, Tom Berenger, young Charlie Sheen. Just really an all-star cast, right? Just so many good um, young actors in that. It's Oliver Stone movie, his sort of his Vietnam tribute, but such a powerful movie. And again, I wouldn't see it in '87 because I think I was a little too young to really understand what the Vietnam War was, and um, I mean, I knew what the Vietnam War was. I just kind of got that through history books and GI Joe comics and things like that. I didn't really have like a true account, even though my uncle um, was had fought in the war, and he dealt with a lot of issues, and I'm sure there he never talked about it, but he had definitely some demons there, and you know, fortunately, he didn't do anything crazy, but you could tell he was damaged by war, and you know, I think that's true for a lot of people who, we have relatives and who fought or came back from Vietnam, and um, they probably, they don't want to talk about the war. They don't talk about the war. They just want to move on. But you definitely know they carry a deep, scar and trauma from those events. And yeah, I told you my that uncle passed away this year recently, and I just remember my last dinner with him. This was back in I want to say 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. I was working in Korea at the time, but I came to the States to visit my sister. And at that time, he was living in California. So, um, my cousins and I, we met up. We took him out to dinner. And I took him out to a nice we took him out to a nice Korean place. And we got him his favorite food, which is, pork belly, like Korean pork belly. And he got to drink that night. I was, because we were driving him home and stuff. We just basically, I got to, I got to drink. I wasn't driving. My cousins were driving, so I got to drink. And I didn't say no because in the past he would want to drink with me when I was younger, and I wasn't into drinking or doing all that stuff back then, or eating pork belly and all that. And I just remember one time, this was in New York. When he lived in New York, I would go visit him in New York. And one time he was just at home, and it was this kind of same setup. He's like, "Hey, come drink with me." And he was cooking pork belly. And I just remember at that time, I had a few shots with him, but I wasn't really like, I wasn't hungry. I wasn't wanting to eat and kind of really hang out and get drunk with him. And I could see the disappointment in his face. And I was a little bit immature to understand kind of what he wanted. He just wanted to like drink and have a good time and with his nephew, right? And I know he viewed me as like a son. So I, in 2013 or 2012 when I last saw him, we we just I wanted to recreate that for him, and we took him out to have pork belly and drink soju, and he got loaded that night. um, but he was happy. He was happy, and he got home okay. Probably slept, had slept, stomach full. Got to hang out. I was just pouring drinks for him all night and matching him shot for shot. So yeah, that made up for it. And that's my last. That's the last time I see him. So um, it'll be a good way to just remember our time together. We didn't have very many, opportunities. He was in New York when I was in Washington State, and the few times I got to see him in New York, I was in college, and then he moved to California because my cousins moved out there, and he moved there. Then he ultimately moved to Alaska, where he was working, and um, ultimately, I think in Alaska, he got sick, um, and he passed away in Alaska with his wife, my aunt. Um, but another really fortuitous thing was like he got to go to Korea and hang out with his because he's a twin. He's the older of the twin brothers, and twin uncles, I should say. And the twins got to hang out, and then he passed shortly after that. So um, yeah, I know my dad is probably really shaken up by that more than probably more than most people because my dad didn't have uh, a dad growing up. My grandfather died in the Korean War um, when my dad was like 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. So my uncle, who's almost 10 years older than him, was really that um, father figure growing up. So uh, yeah, I mean, my father always he made sure you know that we understood that you know that his brother was the person who worked for the family and you know was the sort of the protector, the man of the house, even though he's too young to be the man of the house, but you know, kind of given that burden at a very young age. So yeah, um, that's I know this all started with some reference to the Vietnam War, but Platoon, yeah, Platoon was a movie that I mean, it won so many Oscars. It had this beautiful Barber's Adagio as a soundtrack. Such an emotional piece. Um, that piece of classical music paired as part of the score of that film. Such a powerful scene where Willem Dafoe is killed by his own unit. So yeah, just one of those just films that you know I actually want to kind of go back and watch it. I haven't watched it in years, but just kind of go back and watch it. Black Hawk Down was a great movie. Yeah, yeah, different kind of war movie, but yes, great war movie. Um, Thank you, Miss So. Yeah, my uncle was you know, again, he didn't have many opportunities, so what he sacrificed for the family led to, my dad having an education and all that. So he's a special guy. All right. Well, let's see here. We covered the comic books, and I'm trying to think what else we're going to talk about. Um, a lot of things are happening in terms of comic book news. We've got Jim Lee's Hush. Now we're starting to see the visuals and the cover for Hush 2, which is I think coming out next month or in May, if I'm not mistaken, like right around the summer period. So it's just around the corner. And one thing I am lamenting about the Hush 2 run is I don't have a comic book budget to pick up the issues. So I need to kind of like, I don't know, find a way to justify maybe at least, we're talking about what? It'll probably be about 11 books and they'll probably be around 4.99. I want to say they're going to be about $5 per issue. So that's like 50 bucks right there, assuming you get them at, and I'm, you know, low print like variants. I'm just trying to get the standard issues, the Jim Lee covers, and just kind of leave it at that. But it'll be what, again, like 11 books. So something like 60 bucks probably at the LCS. And so I need to find a creative way to justify a $60 budget to my wife to pick up these books. And then it doesn't end there. 2026, you're going to see the third part of the Hush trilogy. So these creators, again, the whole group that developed Hush, the original Hush run, Scott Williams, Jim Lee, Jeff Loeb, Alex Sinclair, right? That whole team is back together for the two subsequent runs of Hush. There's a lot of mystery, and I know Jim Lee's sort of teased some pages and panels and kind of got a loose synopsis of what the Hush will be, but it's still quite a mystery on what the Joker will be in it. We saw a Joker fish, we saw a Joker, but as to how that uh, unfolds, we'll just have to wait and see. But it's highly anticipated. There's a lot of hype being built about it. Um, and again, I think anybody who's a comic book fan um, just recognizes how special this kind of project is, right? When you bring um, the creators back on such a beloved run and character and series. Hey, what's up, Tyler? How you doing? Oh, is it a 6 issue arc? Okay. Um, that makes it a little bit more palatable in terms of the budget. So 30 versus 60 is different. So thank you for that update. So it'll probably be 6 issues for second part two, and then 6 issues around there for part three. That's much easier to absorb. Hopefully they don't skimp on the content. It's probably going to be an action-packed 6 issues, but it should be. Again, they're building up the hype for it. It's really independent of all the other James Gunn news. This is just purely like DC publishing, right? It's just the comic books, and um, social media is a good vehicle for promoting that. But I'm seeing a lot of people really excited about it. Um, there's some cool animations, and again, Jim Lee's kind of teasing, pages here and there, panels here and there, and it's incredible. So just really expecting a dynamic story around the whole thing. Should be cool. Some of the other things that we're seeing are a lot of yeah, like sort of Todd McFarlane is going to introduce um, a deceased character from the early part of Spawn, who comes back as like a Spawn demon, um, and we're going to see, I think, a retelling of um, Robotech. Robotech is coming back in comic book format as well. Uh, just sort of all this 80s, like, you know, He-Man's coming back as a movie, I think, right? The Goonies are coming back. There's just a lot of stuff kind of to be excited about that's touching upon what I'm talking, this late 80s, mid to late 80s run of content. But kind of, throwing the nostalgia line out and reeling back in these like things from, 40 years ago that really captured the imagination of my generation and subsequent generations. So that's great to see. Yeah, Gremlins is one. Uh, I think Goonies is probably going to be the biggest kind of I think, again, the success of the Barbie movie. It's just, once a movie like that has that kind of success, it's like they're going to make everything to mimic that kind of success. So you're going to get the He-Man toys. You're going to get the G.I. Joe Transformers coming back. You're going to get every little obscure thing. I'm sure you'll see Thundercats at some point, right? Thundercats, Robotech. Robotech is that's just that's just ripe for the cinematic picking right there. Space adventure with jets and that turn into robots and stuff. Come on, it's just the stuff little kids would eat up, even no matter if they're Gen Y, Gen Z, or I don't know what they're calling it. Is it Gen Alpha again? The the new one, the new kids, Gen Alpha, whatever it is. It's like I don't think age has anything to do with you know the cool factor when it comes to content like that. Yeah, Gen Alpha. I think my son is Gen Alpha. Gotta gotta verify, but I think it is. He is. Um, uh, an update on. So I didn't pick up any books this week, and I do have a book coming though. And again, I have $4 to my name, and but the book that's coming was courtesy of Mercari. Now I use the Mercari app. It's sort of this wannabe eBay. I think it's ultimately a Japanese platform, if I'm not mistaken. Japanese online shopping kind of platform for, again, used goods, collectibles, and stuff like that. Um, but I had $10 credit. I didn't even know I had $10 credit. Uh, but I applied that credit to a book that was offered to me for $1. But the crazy thing about Mercari is Mercari has like these fees and the shipping. So that flat shipping and fee is gonna cost you about $8 to begin with, like with tax and everything, right? So it's really an $8. If you're gonna get any kind of comic book, it's just an $8 flat fee. If even if it's a cent, right? If you're buying a book for a cent, it's an $8 fee on top of that. So even a $1 book, I'm paying essentially what, $9 to get that book. But again, I had $10 worth of credit, so I got the $1 book, and I will unbox the $1 book next week, and it should be. I love the book that I'm getting. It's a definitely a book I've been wanting to pick up. It's been on my want list for quite some time. So to get, if I had gotten it for $1, like out in the wild, that would be crazy. But I'm actually getting it free. But technically, like again, $9. Um, I wouldn't have paid $9 out in the wild, but online, who knows? $9 seems kind of fair. Um, the condition of the book is low grade, but I'm thinking it's maybe in the VG range. So um, we'll have to see. Again, they're not very descriptive. The book. I tried to look through the pictures, but you can't tell if it's like a detached cover sometimes in the description. It doesn't look to be detached, but there could be some, tears here and there that we don't see, or a little bit of staple issues. But there's also this sort of like fraying at the edges and stuff. So it's not a mid grade book for sure. It's in the low grade, but it presents pretty well. So we'll kind of grade the book when it gets here. But that should be here next Wednesday, and we'll unbox it probably that night, or I'll unbox it and then just go over it with you. I think the unboxings are for my, they're for my edifice. You guys don't want to see me unbox. You just want to see the book. So I'll unbox it on my own and then share it with you guys this time next week, Friday. So stay tuned for that. All right. Couple more things. I want to give a shout out to G Lantern Comics. G Lantern Comics and I are gonna get together and maybe trade some books. So I'm really looking forward to just whether we do a trade or not. I just really want to kind of like hang out with a guy, kind of see his collection, and just talk comic books. That guy's very passionate about comic books, and he's a very ardent DC collector. And it's not every day you meet guys of our generation who are comic book collectors in my sphere. I have a few in the community, but not in my area. So it'll just be cool to, kind of get to know him a little better, but develop a collecting buddy here locally, and kind of understand what he likes and what I like, and so we can kind of look out for each other and trade books as we go forward. So, G Lantern Comics, really appreciate you, dude. Hit me up when you're ready to meet up for the trade. Oh, what kind of stuff am I looking for? Yes, Superman. hmm Older Superman, bronze, silver, golden age if you have it, but that's a big that's a big lift. Um, but definitely even the modern stuff, 90s books, newsstand copies of like the 90s run, Jurgens run. That's fine. I'm also looking for Jim Lee books I don't have, not Jim Lee book. And that's a little bit difficult. I almost don't want to publicize Jim Lee, because oftentimes when people say they have Jim Lee books, they're already books I have. Sort of the more obscure ones that I'm looking for. But there are certain runs where, you know, I need to fill some of my Divine Run, a Divine Right by Jim Lee. There's some maybe a couple holes in Superman and Chain, couple holes in Suicide Squad that he's on. Scooby Doo, I think that he did the first 3 episodes or 3 issues of Scooby Doo Adventures or whatever it's called. I think I only have issues 1 and 2. It's just a hodgepodge of random Jim Lee stuff. So hopefully, if you have that, Tyler, hit me up, man. What are you looking for, Tyler? What do you collect? It's like Jim Lee. I have so much of the Jim Lee stuff. Actually, I don't want to say I have so much. I have about 400 Jim Lee books, but there's still 300 more that I don't have. But a lot of it is either really like modern, kind of rare type books, books that are just maybe, a little out of reach in terms of paying full value for them, um, or they're very obscure books. Like, I don't know. Good example might be, I guess, like that Wolverine variant. It's a modern variant. It's actually a panel in Wolverine 50, the last panel, like a pinup. But Marvel went and did a variant cover for it. It's Jim Lee Wolverine in the yellow costume. That's like a hundred, $200 book or something like that. So, I mean, I'm not going to pay that for that book, but I wouldn't mind having it in my collection. But again, it's not something I'm going to go out and like try to get. I don't. If I want to look at that image, I can just open up a '90s book and yeah. I'm not too big into the Marvel rehash covers, like what they sporadically want to take steal Jim Lee art and put it on their covers and stuff and sell comic books and don't really support that. Although there are certain books where like, oh man, they brought that image out and you kind of want to get it. So um, there are those instances. So I'm not immune to it. I'll pick it up if it's like $1 or something. But I'm not going to pay $100 for a Jim Lee Wolverine cover that was, the back of a '90s book. Nice, nice. 85, yeah. So I'm assuming you watched, the Christopher Reeve Superman and fell in love with Superman much like I did. Sounds like we're about the same age. 'Cause I started collecting 85 too. Fifth grade, fifth or sixth, yeah, fourth or fifth grade is when I started getting books. Nice. Thanks for hanging out, Tyler. Yeah, I'm trying to just, comic books has always been about nostalgia for me, just kind of reliving my childhood, growing up reading these stories and really connecting with the books on multiple levels, not just reading, but the art, um, all the great different characters and places you're transported to. Um, but you know, yeah, it's just a nice kind of reprieve from all the other stuff going on in your life, and so it's kind of like my drug of choice, I guess, in terms of collecting and yeah, as you can see, like again, I love Superman, so I try to you know trying to collect more of the books that would be. I can't collect it all, unfortunately. So I try to really be selective about at least getting the books by the artists I like. Um, the era I collected, um, but just like key covers, key books, key moments in Superman's history. So anything along those lines. So if you got any Neil Adams books, Kurt Swan books, Kurt Schaffenberger books, those kinds of artists. Who's another great Superman? I'm leaving off this list. Obviously, when you get to the golden age, it's like Al Plastino. Um, you know, I mean, we uh, Joe Siegel's almost one of those like untouchable type things you can add to your collection because it's just so old. Okay, yeah. Well, it's always good to get back into it. You know, like um, I think we were collecting during an era that didn't really go up in value all that much. So you can go out and get all the comic books that you read or didn't read from that era for like, I mean, they're cheaper than the stuff coming out now. You know, you're paying what, 3.99, 4.99 just to get books now. You can get them for what we read, or the books that we read, for a dollar or less sometimes. I've been picking up a lot of my books for like 50 cents to a dollar, right around that range. So, and I love it when I do that. It's like, could care less if it's a high grade and worth $100. Give me the stuff I read as a kid for like 50 cents. I prefer that. Oh, 3,000 trade. Wow, that's a lot. Okay, well, sounds like, yeah, you kind of pared down your collection. Hope you got good money for it. you know, didn't part with your collection for like pennies on the books. But so you got, what were some of the books you oh, you had the triangle. Okay, right. Yeah. I do want to get the omnibus. I think that would be kind of cool. I know they have the Death of Superman trades, but it's, you know what I mean. It only covers that really. What was it, like 6 or 7 issues where they're battling and leading up to the battle and after the battle. But something that just covers the whole, kind of like that whole triangle and post triangle run, right? Post death, return, or so I should say, post return, um, kind of all the way to what, see, issue 100 of Superman, right? Through the death of Clark Kent kind of run. It'd be nice to kind of get that big volume and just have it, be able to enjoy it at any time. Because yeah, there's a lot that happens. Um, such a big, such a big event. Doesn't, and I feel like as the years have gone by, because I think that whole era came as kind of at the height of comic books, right? And then when the comic boom or the comic bust, the bubble burst, it's like it was kind of associated with the bust. It's like kind of like that was the last thing you remember. Oh, the death of Superman, and then the bust happens, and you just remember, hey, you kind of like associate the bust with that the death of Superman in a lot of ways, but they had nothing to do with one another. Um, it was actually through, yeah, the bust happened after Superman came back, right? So again, I guess there's a little bit of that association, but yeah, good collecting era. But yes, it did bust, and I think a lot of us. It sounds like you didn't. You were collecting through that, through today. But for me, '97 was the year I think I bought my last comic book because I entered the workforce and just stopped caring about comic books, which I guess is a good or bad thing. I guess it's good that I didn't mass a huge um, collection of like worthless books, but at the same time, getting back into it has been fun. So yeah, it's good. All right. Well, great to hang out with you, Tyler. And so I hope you're still there if you're listening. And I did catch the Y files. I did watch the Y Files. It's a little. I mean, it's great. I think it's great, but it definitely kind of I don't want to think about it. It's just it kind of depresses me in a lot of ways. Um, that there's this whole other um, kind of set of rules, right, around controlling us, controlling, you know, the masses uh, with through the through the media and yeah, you just as a person, you should be caring about truth and what's going on, but it kind of live in our little siloed bubbles, and we're very indifferent to a lot of the things. The truth, we're basically indifferent to understanding and knowing the truth of the things that go on around us. So it was a little bit, yeah, I know. It's like I was just like, it's again a lot of history, a lot of like in-depth investigative type facts, and it just just kind of like, man, that happened, and then why weren't we informed of it? But no, it's there. If you want to look up the information and kind of dig through it, it's all there. The information's not it's not like well, some of it, right? Some of it, the government documents that are kept secret and then released many, many, many years later when people don't care anymore. But can't wait for the DDO, the next D. How was the Daredevil launch? That's another thing I didn't get to. First of all, I don't have Disney Plus, but I've been highly anticipating the Daredevil series. I really was like considering getting a subscription just to watch Daredevil and the subsequent. That there rumors they're going to bring back Luke Cage and Jessica Jones and um, Punisher's going to get his own series, and so going to mute right quick. Haven't watched the new episode. Okay, okay. Sorry. Yeah, we won't talk about DD, but I just want to get an understanding from it was good so far. That's all I need to hear. It was good. And I kind of got that sense it would be um, because they're essentially keeping the same tone as the Netflix series, right? So if they just stay consistent with what they were producing before, and they brought back, Karen Page, they brought back Foggy, so all the, sort of the older cast or the original cast, they brought. Uh, Kingpin looks, I mean, he looks good, he worked out, he just looks like he put on a lot of muscle and just uh, as menacing as ever, and so yeah, and he's like trying to be this like public figure. He's the mayor. He's trying to be this public figure, but he's got all the worst of intentions, right? He's trying to consolidate power and um, rule the city and do whatever he wants. And he's again the way um, D'Onofrio portrays Kingpin as just this raving lunatic who feels he's justified to do what he does. Like he honestly believes like this, he's serving a higher purpose kind of thing, which is the great thing about that character, right? But he's just this raging lunatic. Um, but yeah, that character is truly frightening, and and they're taking the violence and all the adult nature of that series to a new level because they kept it kind of Marvel. Not that they kept it PG in the Netflix series, but they're going full like, they're going full crazy on the new series. So that's good to know. Yeah, you're gonna just see all the Daredevil books and Punisher books shoot up now. Iron Fist books are gonna shoot up. Um, it's good to have these drivers of the hobby um, create the excitement. Yeah, but that was the one series I was like, when they announced it, I was like, oh man. Um, but yeah, let's not do spoilers. But glad it's satisfying the fan. I knew it would satisfy the fans. Fans, anytime you're sticking to the character uh, and just combining really great acting, storytelling in a riveting serial format. It's a key to success for appeasing us sheep. That's great. All right, guys. Well, yeah, we'll again. I I think I don't have a subscription, but I'm going to do my best to try and watch bits here and there, and try to absorb as much of the series without, you know, because I don't download stuff. I don't illegally download stuff, unfortunately. I probably should, but I don't. So if it's like oftentimes content that I can't watch, I just have to kind of like catch little spoilers here and there and try to fill in the gaps. But yeah, it should be good. Excited for all of you who are watching it. So at some point, maybe after the series is over, that people have spoiled it enough to where I can talk about it. We'll talk about it. But um, yeah, that's again, it's going to be daylight. What is it? We're entering daylight. No, no, we're jumping out of daylight savings. So we're going to push our clocks forward on Sunday, and that just means we're gonna it's gonna warm up, hopefully for in your area. So hope everybody has just some exciting plans for this weekend, and hope to see everybody back here next week. So yeah, more daylight would be nice. Looking forward to those outdoor, you know, the time spent outdoors and um, doing fun activities. And yeah, it's going to be wrapping up soon, very soon. Again, I'm going to Japan in July, hopefully. I already got my ticket, but there's some issues maybe around getting the time off from work. So we'll see how that works. But I anticipate, my manager will accommodate my schedule. But it's one of those situations where I kind of have to wait and see, like right leading up to the trip. But yeah, I'm gonna go be in Japan, so I'm spending 10 days on my trip. Um, 7 of the days will be maybe I'm gonna try to split maybe 5 days in Japan, 4 days in Korea, and the 4 days in Korea will be right in the middle. So I'll go to Japan, go to Korea, and then come back to Japan and really get to hang out with my friends at the latter part of the trip before I come back. But my wife and kid will be out there most of the summer, but it should be very yeah. I'm gonna try to pick up some comic books and you know a lot of the otaku stuff. So the Japanese comic books, so manga, toys. Probably go to Akihabara. I don't have a ton of time. If I had more time, I would hit up a bunch of spots. But I'm probably going to hit up Akihabara and a couple of the used bookstores um, near nearby Akihabara. So there's a great there's actually a really good in Ikebukuro. There's a bunch of uh, lesser. I don't want to say lesser known because they're known by locals. Locals will know these spots, but I think for the Americans or the tourists that come to Tokyo, they're all going to Akihabara. They're going to Nakano Broadway to pick up all the because that's where the geeks that's where a lot of the sort of the geek museums and stuff are there. But in terms of buying stuff, you can get all that stuff in different parts of the city. And luckily, I know where a lot of those because I lived there for 3 years. Um, so I know all the other little spots to hit. Ikebukuro is a great place for manga, um, video games. Not that I'm going to pick up video games, but I'm just saying like I want to pick up manga, um, Japanese, so like just used bookstores where they'll have maybe comic books or I'm really looking for the Peach Momoko, um, her first art book that was published in Japan. That's a very big book. It's like probably like $1,000 book. But I'm just hoping it's like on the shelves in some obscure Japanese bookstore, and it's there for like 30, $40 or something, and I can pick it up for a really cheap price. But there are other like comic book related stuff, so like Marvel comics, special like one-off Marvel editions that may be sitting at some of these like more obscure bookshops. But we won't know what we until we actually go and look and ask and see. I will be in Seoul. Actually, my parents live just right outside of Seoul. It's like it's from like this city center. It's probably like a 30-minute subway ride to where my parents are. So it's just right outside the main metropolitan area. But I'll be there, so I'll be real close to the city center, and it will be uh, this place called Hannam, which is just right outside, so it's not that far. But again, Korea will be. I will. I mean, I anticipate I gotta spend a lot of time with my parents. I'll be seeing friends, a bunch of friends out there. So it's gonna be and I'm just gonna be drinking because that's all my friends want to do. And we'll see. Maybe they'll want to do other stuff, but for the most part, I know my friends all drink. They're still drinking. I mean, that's what Koreans do, right? They get together and they drink. So when I go there, it's just going to be like, let's meet up at in the night, in the evening. Let's eat, let's drink, and maybe probably sleep over um, one of their places if I can't get back home. Because I have to cab it back, probably back home. So I anticipate what I'll do is I'll drink, spend the night at one of my friends' places, and then go back to my parents the next day. Because or choose to just not drink that much and leave at a reasonable hour. But that rarely happens when you're in Seoul and catching up with your buddies, with your friends, your homies. But yeah, again, there's so much to plan and get ready for. Also, budget. What kind of budget will I have when I'm out there? I am planning to do some shop, and also I'll be bringing back some books because I have a bunch of comic books, a bunch of stuff at my parents' place, like old sports cards and stuff. I don't even know what's there. My parents are just like, yeah, you have sports cards here, you have comic books here. I have a good idea what comic books are there. not too clear on the sports card aspect. And yeah, I just have a bunch of like my PS5 is there still, my old computers are there, a bunch of like Gundam models are there, just a mishmash of like otaku stuff out there. So I'm hoping to bring as much of it as back as I can, and we'll go over what that is. I do have like trade paperback comic books, which I'm looking forward to bringing back because that's kind of cool stuff. I think for the most part, they're first print, the first edition trade paperbacks. So not that they're like crazy valuable, but in terms of like protecting and keeping in my collection, it should be cool. Tyler, okay, wow, okay, cool. We out? What were you out there for? Just visiting? That's cool that you're out there. Yeah, I talked to so many people here. Whether they're people that I've worked with or people that are in my community. But a lot of people have been to Japan. First of all, there's a lot of people who just haven't traveled outside the U.S. Um, but if they have traveled, uh, it's rarely East Asia that they go to. And if they have gone to East Asia, it's usually like China or Japan. But yeah. Um, oh, cool. Okay. Hey, Tyler, I didn't. No, no. Okay. I feel like I met you at some point. No, no. Well, congratulations. Yeah. So that's cool. Is your son an adult now? Yeah, I'm looking forward to. Um, I don't think there'll be anything crazy expensive because that period I was collecting sports cards. I started collecting sports cards back in like '86. Um, so there's not a lot of terribly expensive cards. Um, but there are some like Jordan. I want to say there's some Jordan basketball cards there. I know I have the Jim Lee Jordan Bird where he illustrates this Jordan. I think it's from Upper Deck. It's an Upper Deck basketball card that Jim Lee illustrates as of like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. I know I have that card in like a comic sleeves or in a card sleeve somewhere, and I want that card. That's like because I love Jim Lee, and I know I have that card. I'm really hoping that's the thing I come back with. That's the because I lost that at some point, but I know it's in a binder somewhere. So if they have that binder, and I asked my parents, I'm like, "Is there a big binder of cards?" They're like, "Yeah, I think so." So if that big binder is there, man, there's a bunch of nice cards in that binder. I mean, relatively nice. I don't, they're rookie cards and stuff. Nothing again, nothing crazy of value, but it'll be like, like sure there'll be some like Edgar Martinez rookie cards or something in there. Should be good. Yeah, that is a great card. Yeah, that's a again, it's not worth anything crazy, but as a comic book fan, right? Um, it's a pretty cool card to have. The fact that Jim Lee got to illustrate a Bird and Magic, I don't know, Bird and Jordan superhero like comic card thing. That's pretty cool. Um, I'll have the Bo Jackson score black and white. Where he's got the bat on the shoulder pads. I have that card as well. Um, I'm sure there'll be some Beckett magazines. Beckett Card Beckett monthly magazines, like football, hockey, basketball, baseball. Collecting. I kind of bought all those back in the day. I'm sure there'll be some maybe Wizard magazines. Maybe I'm hoping, and maybe some comic books. I know. So I know I got comic books when I was living in Korea. I did get comic books because I bought them off of eBay just to read or have. So I do have those comic books. Nothing crazy expensive, just like Jim Lee Superman books, some of the Gunslinger, um, Batman Hush type comic books from the early 2000s. Um, so those I know are there, and I'll bring those back. But it's the card stuff. Yeah, it's really the card stuff that they have a bunch of the old binders. It'll just be good. Not, again, I don't think I'll, you know, who knows? There might be like a Chipper Jones rookie in there. I'm trying to think of the big, maybe a couple like Frank Thomas cards. Um, maybe some like there'll be a bunch of Barry Bonds cards, I'm sure. Back then, when I was collecting, Barry Bonds was not like a. He wasn't that. Uh, it wasn't until like later in his career that where he was when he joined the Giants and stuff, which I was kind of like getting out of collecting at that time. But back in the late '80s, early '90s, Bonds wasn't a highly coveted collectible. Um, but yeah, I'm sure there'll be some like Mike Greenwell rookie cards. That was like Mike Greenwell's pretty coveted. It's like it's weird how like and when you're in the thick of the hobby, it's like you just don't have insight into who's going to emerge as like a Hall of Fame player. But now, in hindsight, you'll go. I'm sure there's going to be like, or some like there's going to probably be some Gary Payton cards, um, maybe some Shaquille O'Neal cards. I'm sure there'll be something that'll turn up. Yeah, Jim Lee is Jim Lee. Yeah. Um, that's another thing. Spring training is. I don't know how many of you are like baseball fans. I'm a big baseball fan, but my team is the Mariners, and nothing against the Mariners. I love my team, but it's just been the most frustrating team to follow. So I'm kind of a convert now. I'm actually excited about the Dodgers. I was watching and cheering for the Dodgers all last season because I love um,